June 19th, 2024. A police interview room in Washington City, Utah. The woman in this chair has just been arrested after a 13-hour manhunt involving helicopters, drones, and police from across the county. Detectives expect what they almost always get in this room: denial, tears, a lawyer. Instead, she tells them everything, calmly, in order, including the part they don't ask about, the part where she went back upstairs to make sure. And when detectives reach the question of remorse, she answers on camera.
I don't regret it. I hate them.
And in the sworn probable cause statement filed that same week, detectives recorded the rest of her answer. Word for word. She would not change what she had done. She would do it again. No remorse. Her own words, on camera and in the charging documents. But 18 months later, in a courtroom 40 minutes away, this same person will say something so different that even the people who lost the most in this case won't know whether to believe it. To understand how we got here, you have to go back one day, to a quiet street in Washington City, Utah, to the last hour of a Tuesday evening in June. Washington City sits on the northeastern edge of St. George in the far southwestern corner of Utah. Red rock, desert heat, fast-growing subdivisions. The kind of place that shows up on lists of safest small cities in the state. Joseph and Gail Bailey lived here on East Chinook Drive in a 2-story family home they shared with their adult son and his wife. By every account that would later be read into the court record, the Baileys were not complicated people. At sentencing, their son Dustin would describe them this way: hard-working, dedicated, defined by how they lived, not how they died. He said what the family misses most isn't anything dramatic. It's the porch, the phone calls, the ordinary moments. On the evening of June 18th, 2024, at 7:02, Washington City Police were called to that house. Inside, officers found Joseph and Gail Bailey. Both had been shot. Both were dead. And one thing was missing from the scene: the gun. Downstairs, there was a locked bedroom door with a bullet hole through it. Another bullet hole in the bedroom wall. The couple's son and his wife had been inside that room when the shot came through. They were not hit. It was the son who called 911. He told dispatchers what he'd heard: an argument upstairs, then gunshots. He'd locked the door, then a single shot punched through it. Police didn't have to look far for a suspect. A neighborhood surveillance camera had already answered that question. A bright yellow 2014 Kia Soul leaving the scene. Police knew exactly who it belonged to. The Bailey's youngest child, 28-year-old Mia Bailey, who had once lived in that house and, according to the charging documents, was, quote, no longer welcome there. Within hours, police put out a public alert. 5'10", 130 pounds, armed and dangerous. Last seen in a car you could spot from a block away. The manhunt was on. What police didn't know yet is that Mia Bailey had already thought about how to disappear. According to the probable cause statement, she threw her phone out of the car window as she drove to avoid being tracked. It almost worked. The phone was recovered close to the scene only because a telematic alert tipped off law enforcement. Early Wednesday morning, before sunrise, someone spotted the yellow Kia in St. George. Police flooded the area and set up a containment perimeter. She slipped through it. Lieutenant Corey Klotz of the Washington City Police would later explain how darkness and heavy shrubbery, multiple agencies, and she walked out of the net. What she did during those overnight hours we know from her own account, given later in the interview room. She jumped fences and walls, she hid in bushes, she slept for a while in a public park bathroom. Helicopters were up, drones were up. She hid from both. The charging documents say she would later brag about it. But a yellow Kia Soul and a county full of people watching the news is a bad combination for staying hidden. At the morning briefing, Lieutenant Klotz described how it ended. In his words, "Come daylight, we had more citizens waking up and seeing information that was posted last night. We started to get calls from all over the county. Just before 8 a.m., one of those calls gave police an exact location. A person hiding in the shrubbery against the wall near someone's home, in the area of Horseman Park and River Road. When officers moved in, Mia Bailey pulled the gun from her waistband, but she didn't point it at them. She pointed it at herself. For roughly the next 2 hours, negotiators talked to her. The gun stayed visible the entire time. Police would later say the goal was simple: get everyone through this alive. And eventually that's what happened. She set the gun down where she stood, left it, and walked to the officers. 13 hours after her parents were found, Mia Bailey was in custody, booked into the Purgatory Correctional Facility, held without bail. The manhunt was over. The part nobody was prepared for came next. Police interviews after a double homicide usually go one of two ways: silence and a lawyer, or a story, a version of events where the suspect is the victim, where it was an accident, where someone else did it. Mia Bailey chose a third way. She narrated. What follows comes directly from the probable cause statement and from the interview footage released by Washington City Police. She told officers she went to the house, quote, with the intent to kill her parents. She entered through the unlocked front door without permission. She found her mother, Gail, and began shooting almost immediately. Her mother was hit 3 times and fell. Her father, Joseph, heard the shots and came toward her. She shot him in the head. Then she went downstairs where her brother and his wife had locked themselves in their bedroom. The charging documents state she fired 1 round through the locked door in the direction of her brother. She would tell detectives her brother was, quote, not her main target, but in her words, she would not have been sad had the gunshot killed him. Then she went back upstairs. This is the detail that separates this case from a crime of momentary rage, the detail prosecutors put in writing. She returned to her father, who was lying on the ground, and shot him 1 more time in the head, quote, to make sure that he was dead. While doing that, she heard her mother making noises, so she walked back to her mother and shot her in the head to make sure that she was dead. Detectives asked about remorse. On camera, her answer was 5 words.
I don't regret it. I hate them.
And the probable cause statement records the rest of it. She did not have remorse for her actions. She would not change what she had done. And in the words detectives wrote down that week, she would do it again. In the interview, she talked about why. Years of conflict with her parents, strained relationships across the family. Among the disputes she described, conflict over her gender transition, which she said her parents had stood in the way of. Court records show she had legally changed her name in 2023. Whatever the full truth of that family's private history, the affidavit records one chilling detail about how the rest of the family saw that night. Multiple relatives told police they were afraid of her. Every one of them found somewhere else to sleep. The arresting officer summed it up in 5 words. Mia is a danger to the community. The Washington County attorney charged her with 2 counts of aggravated murder, attempted aggravated murder, aggravated burglary, 7 counts of felony discharge of a firearm. In Utah, aggravated murder is a capital offense. The death penalty was on the table. 8 days after the murders, Mia Bailey appeared in court for the first time by video link from the jail. The case that followed took a 1.5 years, and almost none of it went the way the public coverage assumed it would. First, the death penalty came off the table. The Washington County Attorney's Office announced it would not seek execution. Second, jail didn't go quietly. In October 2024, she picked up new assault charges after an altercation inside Purgatory Correctional Facility. And third, the part of this story that never made the headlines, the part that came out in court. 10 days before the murders, Mia Bailey had been in a hospital. She had checked herself in. Paranoia, delusions, hallucinations. Her own attorney would lay this out at sentencing. She committed herself in psychiatric crisis, asking for help. She was discharged after 3 days. 10 days later, Joseph and Gail Bailey were dead. None of that changes what she did. The court record is unambiguous, and so was she. But it reframes the question this case leaves behind. Her family would later describe years of severe mental illness, escalating instability, and, in their words, repeated failures by the systems that were supposed to help. In November 2025, 17 months after the murders, Mia Bailey accepted a plea deal. The plea itself tells you how the lawyers on both sides had come to see this case. She pleaded guilty and mentally ill. 2 counts of aggravated murder. 1 count of aggravated assault, reduced from the attempted murder of her brother. Guilty and mentally ill. In Utah, that plea means the conviction stands in full, but the state acknowledges the defendant's mental illness on the record. All that remained was the sentence and the family's chance to speak. December 19th, 2025, 5th District Court, Judge Keith Barnes presiding. Her brother Corey spoke first for the family.
As you may have well read in my letter, I don't feel like there can be any true justice in something like this. It is unfair all around that my family has been broken by this in many ways. We've lost our parents, and we've lost a sibling in many ways as well. So either way, no matter what, we are losing.
Then her brother Dustin. If you watch one piece of this hearing, watch this one. He did not minimize what she did. He asked for consecutive sentences, for accountability in full. And then he said this.
I refuse to pretend you arrived at that moment with a healthy mind, full capacity, or adequate support. You did not.
He told the court his parents would not have wanted maximum punishment for its own sake. They would have asked, in his words, for treatment, structure, safety, acknowledgement of severe mental illness, consequences but not retribution. He argued against life without parole, calling it, quote, abandonment disguised as severity. Think about what that means. The man whose parents were murdered, who was himself shot at through a locked door, stood in court and asked the judge not to throw his sibling away. Mia Bailey did not address the court directly. Her attorney read her statement. 18 months earlier, in the interview room, she had told detectives she didn't regret it, that she hated them, that she would do it again. Now, in writing, she said this.
It brings me great pain and regret of the events that followed. I was not in a stable mindset at the time, and if only I had gotten help, this would have been preventable. It makes me want to die because I can't live with myself. I am sincerely, deeply sorry to my family that I committed this atrocity. I wish I could earn forgiveness in time.
2 statements, same person, 18 months apart, one given calmly to detectives on camera, one read by a lawyer in a courtroom. Which one is the truth? The court didn't have to decide that. It only had to decide the sentence.
Your acts on that day were very chilling.
2 consecutive terms of 25 years to life for the murders of Joseph and Gail Bailey, plus 0 to 5 years for the shot fired at her brother, also consecutive. 50 years to life. She will be in her late 70s before she is first eligible for release. At the sentencing, Judge Barnes read a letter from one of the Bailey's granddaughters. She didn't write about the case. She wrote about a sunset she once watched with her grandparents and how their love felt in the quiet of it. That's what this case leaves behind. A family that, in their own words, lost their parents and a sibling on the same night. A confession with no remorse and an apology that came 18 months too late to be tested. And 10 days in June, between a hospital discharge and a double murder that nobody can give back. What happened on Chinook Drive is settled law now. Why it was allowed to happen is a question Utah and every state is still refusing to answer.